So I am so excited to welcome Mike Gomes as our first guest of the Real Talk Real Estate Sales Podcast. We're so excited to have him here. Obviously, you guys know this is where we get into the nitty gritty and the real of what it takes to be a top producer in this industry. You know, we all talk about the mountaintop, but no one's talking about the valley. So let's talk about the valley and what it took to get to where you need to be a top producing agent. So, Mike, welcome to our podcast. Tell us a little bit about you. Give it to us.
So first and foremost, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, great
So
setup.
excited.
Love it. So I'm not in production anymore, but prior to, leaving production right after COVID, when I started running the brokerage at Signature Realty with John, I was doing very close to about 550 in GCI. And I'm convinced that, if I stayed in production during COVID and after COVID, I think I would have probably increased my GCI probably another 20, 30% because the market was on fire, right? It was like an anomaly. We've never seen it happen. And I've been doing this for, I don't want to give out my age, but like back in 04 when I started in the mortgage business. And I'll tell you a little bit about my history really quick since we're talking about it, because it's very there's a lot of remnants of what's going on today versus back in 07. But I started in the mortgage business back in 2004. I worked for a lot of small little outfits. Then I ended up working for Countrywide. Countrywide ended up getting bought out by Bank of America. I stayed there for maybe about a year and change. Bank of America was really trying to figure out their stuff after the acquisition with Countrywide, plus with the way things were at the time. 07, 08 was not easy for any bank. So it was sort of a nightmare. And I used to blame Bank of America. But, as I got smarter, as I got older, I guess, I realized it wasn't their fault. This was something new to them. So they were trying to figure things out for the staff and for themselves. I went to work for a couple other, smaller outfits, brokerages, direct lenders. And then I said, you know what, enough is enough. I left the industry as a whole, started getting into fixing and flipping properties. I started doing that back in 2010, 11. People were telling me that I'm crazy. I shouldn't do it. And I started in the two-family sector. So I was buying two-family homes. I was fixing it up. And then I would put it on the market and I would sell it. And my first two-family flip, believe it or not, I actually did 70 or 80% of the work myself, which was a learning experience.
You didn't have contractors? You were just like, I need to learn how to do this.
I wanted to do it on my own. And my father's a contractor, but my
Okay.
father was busy. And I took on this very small two-family project. I still remember. I ended up selling it to a good friend of mine who still to this day has it and is one of his money makers. I kind of regret.
Yeah, you kind of regret letting it go.
Yeah, I kind of regret selling it. But I'm not a multifamily, like buy and hold guy. So I bought the property. I did a lot of the work, the demo, the sheetrocking, some of the wiring, some of the plumbing, some of the finish work. Then I got to a point where I got really, really tired. I was like, all right, this is exhausting. Let me extract my ego. And I hired my father. And from there, I started doing some of the work on every one of the two families. Like I would do the demo. Then I said to myself, you know what? Time is very valuable. So we have to work more efficiently. And I decided that I was just going to delegate. I'll become the project manager, which I did. And I'll subcontract most of the work out, which I did. And I saved a lot of money by doing it. And I started implementing that sort of concept after every flip. After I did a bunch of two families, I got into the single family sector. There was more demand around 2014, 2015 for single family houses. So I was like, let me get into the single family house sector. Let me buy, fix it up, sell it. I started doing at a level. I would buy like a ranch or like a Cape Cod home, and then I would add the second level. It was interesting because that was a lot more work than I thought, but the profits were enormous. There were always 3-digit profits. We did very well, or rather I did very well. But at some point I did have a partner. I did a few of those, and then I got back into the real estate game. I actually started working at Weichert. While I was at Weichert, I ventured off. I'm very entrepreneurial, so I did venture off a couple of times. I bought a restaurant/lounge. I got into that for about a year. But never again will I do it. It was fun, for sure. It was fun. It was right before I got engaged with my wife, Adriana. But that was a lot of work as well. A lot of late nights, and the money wasn't worth it, to be quite honest with you. And I said, you know what am I doing here? Let me go back to what I do now, which is real estate. But when I was fixing and flipping, the reason why I got my license was because I said to myself, why not add another stream of income, right? Why not sell my properties? Even though I don't recommend it, to be quite honest with you, after doing it a couple of years later, you want to extract the emotions from it, which I've done a great job at doing it. But now, like all my fix and flips, I hand that over to another agent. I don't take it on my own. So went to work at Weichert, did well there. And then I said to myself, I needed to be at a company that was really going to inspire me. And there's nothing wrong with Weichert. I'm still very good friends with a lot of the people there, including my former manager, Harvey, who's a person that I consider a mentor. Love them a lot. But I needed to be somewhere where it was a little bit younger, where everybody needed to basically run, right? I needed to be reinvigorated. I needed to be around like-minded people. So I decided to go to Signature.
You needed your soul set on fire.
Exactly. And the reason why I went to Signature is because I started seeing Michelle Piaz's signs like everywhere. So I was like, I really got to meet this person. And I already knew Michelle. I met her, I think, back in 05 or 06 at the Atlantic City Real Estate Convention. If you've never been to that, you should go. It's fun. But I met her there. And one of the loan officers that's still to this day, Mario, is a good friend of mine. He was doing business with Michelle already. He was her preferred loan officer. I sent her a message to her admin email, and I get a response from John Steingraber. And I was like, this is like a small world. I knew John. I met John back in 06, actually at the Starbucks inside the Barnes and Nobles in Clark, which is now closed.
No, not there.
Yeah. And I did John's first 2 loans on his 2 investment properties. I met John when John literally got his license. I was actually one of the first vendors at his NJRESN event. So when he responded, right, something in me gave me goosebumps. I was like, this is it. And when John responded, it kind of solidified my decision to go there.
This is where you're meant to be.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that you want to surround yourself with people that are more successful than you.
Absolutely.
Not only was John more successful, but John was also younger than me. So I said, I want to be around him. I want to be around Michelle because Michelle is successful. And I believe in power of proximity.
Absolutely.
Right?
You become who your friends are. You become who you surround yourself with.
Yeah. So, and we were talking about this the other day in the office. Environment is everything. If you want to change the results in your life, if you want to change what's happening to you, a lot of people think it's your mindset. But if you want to change your mindset, it's very simple. Change your environment. Right, I'll give you an example. If you don't want to go out drinking every day, stop going out with the 4 or 5 friends that always encourage you to go out drinking. If you want to become a millionaire, right, hang out with 4 millionaires, and I promise you within a couple of years, you'll be a millionaire.
Absolutely.
Because you have no other choice. You're going to get inspired, and you're going to learn what their habits are. And you're going to start implementing those habits, and you're going to turn those habits into action.
Yep. You want to be a top producing agent? Yeah. Surround yourself with other top producing agents.
Exactly. And that was what
surround
led to my
yourself
decision.
With closers.
Exactly. So then I went to work with Michelle, and within my first year, I doubled my transaction.
Nice.
And then my second year, I got to 30-something units. And then my 4th and 5th year, I was doing about 40-something to 50 units, right? So I was doing about 515 GCI, gross commission income. Tough to be number one agent in your office when you're next to a powerhouse like Michelle, who's doing 7 figures in GCI. But pretty much in 90% of other offices, I would be their number 1 top producing agent. And I was so grateful because I learned so much from Michelle. But the one thing I did learn more so than anything from both Michelle and John was stop making up excuses. I was always quantifying my failures, and you don't want to do that. It leads you to a very tough road in life. A dark path when you start comparing yourself to other people. I said to myself, you know what? This is not a sprint. When I get there, I get there. It doesn't matter that this person got there before me or that person is doing better than me. I'm in competition with one person only, and that person is myself. And once I realized that that's what it needed to be, that's when I was able to sleep better at night. And that's when I started saying to myself, right, let's extract the egos. Let's be inspired by those people rather than feel jealous. So since then, I traveled the world of least resistance, and I became very successful. And it led to me to be where I'm at today. Today, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Signature Realty. I'm extremely happy for what we have done. We have about 440 agents right now.
Woo-hoo.
2.5 years ago, we had 87 agents. And it's been just a beautiful journey. And what we're doing at Signature is just something extraordinary. We got to a point where it was like, oh, great, we met our goals. But it's like now we're like, we're not happy. And that's what it's about. You get to a certain level, instead of thinking you plateaued, now you develop new goals. And I'm sure when we get there,
an X amount of
we're not
offices.
going to be happy.
Yeah.
And it's going to be new goals. And it's not just how many agents, it's also transactions, how many transactions we want to do as well. And changing lives and impacting the lives of our agents, which I truly feel we're doing, right? And we have like proof of concept, like Michelle is successful. I was a successful agent. So when I'm having conversations or masterminds like we did yesterday, it's easy for me to almost command respect in a room,
right? Because
of my past results and my past success as an agent. So they get to relate. And I'm still in the trenches with them, right?
Exactly.
Which is very, very important. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, I mean, to see your transformation is absolutely incredible. There's so much that I learned right now that I didn't even know before. So I'm so thankful that you opened up about that. Thank you so much. And in discussion about like the real, right? We got the real story of Mike Gomes, how it all started. Was there ever a moment of doubt? Like, what is that one or a couple of key moments of doubt where you said to yourself, what if I fail?
Yeah.
And how did you like overcome that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a moment of doubt. So, when you get married, you have this sense of responsibility, right? And it wasn't until we had our first child, Madeline, that there was this sense of doubt. And here's what the doubt actually led me to do. So I was still at Weichert, and when I had my first daughter, I ended up getting a job. And a lot of people don't know that. I ended up going to a bank, CFSB. So I went there for about a year and change. And I went there not because I wanted to go there. I went there because I doubted myself, right? Because when you're 1099, when you're self-employed, you don't know when your next check is coming. So there's always this anxiety, like, oh, where's my next check coming?
Oh, what's the market?
What
are
the
people
market
saying?
looking like, right? You start to think that all these external factors are going to dictate your results, your output. I ran as quick as possible, got a job, making like $30-something thousand a year plus commissions. And when I was there, I realized that it was probably the worst mistake I made because number one, I was miserable, right? I was doing something I didn't want to do. I was doing something for the wrong reasons. So I allowed that doubt to convince me that that was the right decision at that moment. And it never was. In this business, there is going to be struggles. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, this is the valley.
Yeah.
Like what we see on Instagram, on Facebook, and all of that is the mountaintop. You know, we see only the good stuff. And no one's really talking about what it really takes to get to this point where you're, COO or closing 50 plus deals a year. Like,
It takes a lot of struggles. It takes a lot of self-doubt. And people in general need somebody to critique them. I am my biggest critic. And like, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing, like, no one can ever critique me more harsh than I critique myself. That's just the reality of it. And when I was there, when I was at CFSB, and no offense, the company was great. Everybody there was awesome. It was just simply that that's not what I wanted to do. I had left the mortgage business already years before that. I was doing what I loved to do, which was flipping. And then I fell in love with real estate as an agent, the consumer side. I said, what am I doing here? And it wasn't until I remember exactly like it was yesterday. My daughter, Madeline, who, by the way, like my whole life changed when I got married. Now I have 3 people because I have 2 daughters now, and I have my wife who is a photographer, but she left her job to be with the kids when we weren't ready. Like when I tell you we weren't ready, we weren't ready. Yeah. And she needed to leave her job because she was also not happy there. And, when she asked me, I said, do it. And we were nowhere close to making what I make today. Not even probably 10%. But I remember taking Madeline, to my point before, to the office. And I had great people around me that didn't care. My manager, who's a good friend of mine right now, Ryan, and Victor Seidman, they're like, yeah, you could bring the kid over. And I had my own office, right? Because at that time I became the team leader.
In true Mike fashion,
exactly.
became a team leader.
But, that's just title. The pay wasn't there. So I was making just very, very small basis points override. Mm-hmm. So I had my own office. So I would bring my daughter, who was just a couple of months old, because Adriana had a full-time job, and she was making more money than me. So we couldn't afford for her to leave that job yet. We already had a mortgage. Right. We bought a house before we got married. We had bills like everybody else. So I would bring my daughter, and I took her to the office once. And then I think it was the second or third time I said to myself, is this what you want? Like, wouldn't it be great? Like if Adriana could be home, wouldn't it be great? Like you're making enough money where you're not dependent on what she makes.
Yep.
Right. So I had an entire like epiphany. I'm like, I have to go back to real estate because that's the only way I'm going to make more money. While I was there, I was like, you know what? I have to start flipping again. So I bought another property. I started to flip again. I left, immediately I left the bank, and that's when I went to Signature. And, once I knew I had at the time these two people, my wife and Madeline, that were dependent on me, and I needed to hold myself accountable to them. This is what I need to do.
This
is what
has
I need to
to
make.
work.
Yeah. No, it must. It must work. You can't leave one single doubt that it's going to work, right? You just have to tell yourself it's going to work. I'm going to figure it out, but I'm going to execute really quick. I'm putting things into action immediately.
And you surrounded yourself with the right people that were going to get you there.
I surrounded myself with the people that were going to not only get me there, but inspire me, right? And still to this day, those same exact people inspire me.
Continue to inspire you.
Yeah, and I'm in a different chapter of my life, right? And I believe that everybody's going to go through a different chapter in their life every 10 years, right? And whatever that chapter is, like what gives you passion today and energy may not be giving you passion and energy in 10 years. Right. So I'll give you my example. I was a real estate agent, loved it. I was flipping properties, loved it. That gave me energy. And then it got to a point where I started mentoring and coaching agents in our office when we had like maybe 50 agents. And that started giving me a lot of energy. And I was doing that for free. I was just doing it because I loved it, right? I loved sharing my secrets to other agents. So I would host little 5-person or 5-agent masterminds. Then I started doing like one-on-one masterminds. And that's when I realized that this is the new chapter of my life. I want to be able to coach. I want to be in a leadership position because I have so much knowledge that I want to share. Not just the successes, but also the failures. Yeah. I believe that there's so much knowledge in failure. Yeah. Right. Because it teaches you what not to do in the future. I'm not going to do it this way anymore because I did it and I failed. And that's okay. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how successful. And look, success is not measured by how much money you have, right? I think success is measured by how much impact you have made. And yes, today I am a millionaire. I'm grateful, knock on wood. But, what I'm doing today versus let's say 5 or 6 years ago is making impact on a lot of people's lives, whether they're real estate agents or just people like in my inner circle, right? Because there's people that, you have your work family, then you have, your friends and family outside of work. Yep. Right. And sometimes it's tough to draw a line there and tough to almost coexist, but at times they can't coexist. Yes. And a lot of people don't agree with me when I say that, but it's not going to. For the most part, because I have 150 plus friendships at the office. I can't invite them. Like I wish I could invite them to my kids' birthdays, but I can't. Yeah. Right. So that's just the reality. So that line sometimes is not going to be able to coexist. But what can coexist is the impact that you make on everybody's life.
And you're able to teach them through like all the experiences you've had in the valley. Yeah. To teach them how to reach that mountaintop. And then it's really up to them whether they want to. You can give somebody the handbook on how to succeed.
Yeah, I say
and
this,
it doesn't matter.
I say this all the time, right? I have this famous line, your output is predicated on your input, right? You're going to reap what you sow. And, I tell a lot of brand new agents to your point a couple of minutes ago, when they come in the door, like we have orientation night on Monday at 4:00, and there's a lot of agents that are brand new. They don't know what some of these agents are doing behind the scenes, like the process that took for them to get to where they're at today. Part of what we do at orientation is letting them know, look, it may look like it's easy, but I promise you, this is harder than what you think. And it's going to be hard, right? There's going to be a lot of obstacles, and that's okay. But I just don't want anybody thinking that the expectation is they're just going to come in, be reactive, and they're going to make a lot of money. No, you have to be proactive. And we've done a great job at walking the horse to the water, but unfortunately, we can't force it to drink. They have to put in the work.
Now, my new thing is, kind of, even to myself, I say it, I can believe in you, but I can't believe for you.
Correct.
Okay, so with that being said.
By the way, you have to be your biggest fan.
Yes, you do.
No one's going to be a bigger fan than you, maybe your mom, but you have to be your own fan. Yeah. Right.
And even in those moments where it's really hard to.
And in success, here's what I've looked at. And Michelle told me this a long time ago, and I looked at her like she was crazy. She goes, Mike, being at the top gets very lonely. There's usually a handful of people that are where you want to be in life, right? So it does become very lonely. So you're going to have to be your own cheerleader, your own fan. And at times you're going to have to pat yourself in the back and say, job well done. You should give yourself credit. You I believe that when you hit certain milestones, right, you owe it to yourself. Go out there and, do a big purchase, whatever it is, a car, whatever it is that you want to do.
What was the most number of deals that you closed at one point when you were in sales? I mean, you said you did how much DCI?
Yeah, like 550. I think 2019 or 20, I did, 52 units.
52 units.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you broke that like 50
Yeah.
barrier. What was it that...
And flipping at the same time.
At the same...
Yeah.
Well, okay. So what advice do you have for an agent that's... We'll start a little lower, like an agent that's between the 10 to 15 deal mark, and they want to get to 30. What advice do you have for that agent?
Very easy. Delegate the stuff that isn't efficient. So I'll give you an example. Don't sit at every home inspection for 2-3 hours. Delegate that stuff. Be very efficient with your time. Work on the business more so than working in the business. And I'll give you an example because a lot of people like to say these cliche lines. Working in the business is you being at a home inspection, you being at a CO inspection, you showing houses, which you have to, right? That's just the reality.
Yep.
But you need to work on the business. Working on the business is working on the brand, working on your social media, which I believe is extremely important, working on prospecting, working on systems that are going to scale your business. Because if you don't work on systems that are going to create scalability, and then if you do double your transactions, guess what? You've done double the work and you're going to feel just exhausted. And you don't want to get there. It's going to require a little bit more work, right? But if you use your time efficiently and scale your business through systems, you're not going to work that much harder to get to 30 units or to double the amount of transactions you've done the year before.
Yeah, you'll get there with ease if you have the right system in place.
Hire a transaction coordinator. Stop managing all of your transactions. If you have 6 or 7 deals that are under contract, you should not be sitting there and managing your transactions. We all know how many emails go out. Like I have a transaction right now. You guys are handling it. Like imagine if I had to read through all those emails. I don't. I really don't. So I have my TC, right? Diandra staff that lets me know what's most important. They send me a quick text and that's it. And I got a recap of whatever happened, right? So working very efficiently, that's extremely important. And also, in this type of market, focus on listings. If you're an agent, you need to focus on listings, right? There's a obvious shortage of supply in the market, which is a big problem. You can work with 20 buyers all you want. If you don't have listings, that's going to be a big problem. So work on listings because managing a listing as an agent takes up a lot less time than it does working with buyers. Like when you're working with buyers, you have to go out on the weekends, right? Or go out and, in the afternoon, take the buyer out to 4 or 5 houses. That's time consuming. I spend maybe 2 hours of my time, let's say per week on a listing. That's it. And I always tell agents, if you did 30 units this year, you did 30 units last year, is that progress? A lot of agents say, no, it's not progress. Wait, it is. I'll tell you why it is progress. If you did 30 units, the same amount of units the following year with a less amount of effort, then to me, that's progress. That means you got there a lot easier, a lot less effortlessly. So that, in my opinion, is, that's progress because there will come a time as an agent that you're going to plateau in terms of units. Like you're going to get to a point where it's like, I cannot do more than this unless I start hiring this, that, and the other. And then you have to make a decision. Do you want to? Like if you're doing 50, 60 units, you're doing good. Like you're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in income. Like you may not want to make more money. You may say to yourself, well, you know what? I actually want to buy back time. I want to spend more time with my kids, right? Or I want to spend more time doing hobbies or being traveling, whatever the case may be. That's fine. If you get to that point, that's very,
progress.
That's very progressive.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what you want in life too.
Gotcha. Okay. So then my next question was going to be is what do you recommend to the agent that's 25, 30 and they want to double that to the 50, 60?
Find out what's consuming the most amount of your time. Like what is it and start delegating that. Start delegating what is taking up your time per day. If let's say you're cold calling 6 hours or 5 hours a day and that's what's consuming your time, if you sold 25, 30 properties, you made money. You can invest money. So go hire an ISA, right? An inside sales agent. Let them make those calls for you. And here's the hardest part when you start delegating and hiring, realizing that you're better at those things than everybody else that you're going to hire. You're always going to be better. But if they do it at 70% capacity, you need to understand that's good enough. Because what are we doing here? We're trying to be as efficient as possible with the time. You need more time to be in front of your clients, whether it's listings, whether it's buyers, you need more time, scheduling appointments, being at appointments versus doing the prospecting when you get to that level. So delegate the prospecting as much as you can. And again, if you want to double it, you have to focus on listings. There's no way you can double your transactions without focusing on listings. You get listings, it's much easier to get buyers. And when you do get a listing, it's gone in this market within a week or two, right? And there's so many creative things that you can do when you have a listing that you can't do when you have a buyer that's purchasing a property. Like I believe in, doing a farewell party. Why? Because you can invite 25, 30 neighbors, which they're going to be inside the house, and they all think they're going to be there because they're going to say farewell to their neighbor that's been there for 10 or 15 years or whatever, how many years it may be. But it's an opportunity for you to be in front of all 25 or 30 people that more than likely will be asking you what's going on with the market. Hey, do you have a couple of minutes tomorrow to look at my house, et cetera? So it's going to create opportunities, right? And now let's say that client, your seller, say they're purchasing a property in the state and you're representing them. Well, when they buy their next property, which wouldn't have happened if you didn't have the listing in the first place, you can do like a welcome party. Same thing. Invite 25, 30 neighbors, come meet your new neighbor, right? And now that's going to create opportunities for you. And there's many other creative ways very similar to that you can do, or rather you can leverage because of the listing, right? If you're doing an open house, for example, you can really do it the normal way, the same common standard way that every agent does it, or you can be very creative, right? Days before, where you're knocking on doors, introducing yourself, circle prospecting, and many other ways to put yourself in a position where you're scheduling an appointment with somebody in that area because of the fact that you had that listing. So listings, in my opinion, are very important. I learned that from Michelle, who only lists.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her leave her house or the office to go represent a buyer in the last 5-6 years. That's incredible. She may be the only agent in the entire state, by the way, that does that. I don't know of any top agent that isn't representing a buyer other than herself.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. And then my last question is, once you get to that point where you're making, X amount of dollars, you're closing over 30 deals, you're making money, right? What do you recommend to these agents to do with their newfound money? Like, what do you recommend that these agents do when they finally start breaking into like making major profits in their business?
Yeah. And when you say major profits, like, any agent making over $200,000 should start reinvesting their money back into, well, if you're going to focus in real estate as an agent, focus back on your brand, right? So reinvest back in your brand, reinvest in revenue generating ideas like leads, for example. But more importantly, from a wealth perspective, I think that doing what you've done and doing what I've done, which is reinvest back in real estate. I mean, I don't buy and hold like you do, but I believe in buy and hold. I think that is great. The reason why I don't buy and hold is because the amount of, or rather the rate of return on my money that I invest is so high that it makes more sense for me to fix and flip as much as I do. I do 6 to 8 transactions per year. So my money is continuously growing, right? If you utilize the compound interest factor, at 23% average, right? I'm doing well with my money. So I'd rather do that. But if I didn't have those opportunities, I would do exactly what you've done, which is buy a bunch of multifamily properties. And then in the future, you can leverage them. Obviously, you're going to cash flow from them. So I think that the agent that's making, 200,000 plus should start reinvesting back into real estate. I'm a big believer. Look, if we're selling real estate as a product, then you should be purchasing that product. You should be purchasing, whether it's family, 2s, 3s, and 4s, or apartment buildings, or flipping, or even lending. Like that's where I'm at right now in my life, right? I'm not fixing and flipping as much anymore because I am, my time is spent at the brokerage growing a multi-million-dollar business. So I'm lending my money. I just lent $360,000 yesterday to 2 friends of mine that are purchasing a property in Morristown. So lend your money. I'm lending it at 12%.
Love that.
That's the beauty about real estate. There's so many niches that you can carve out. We have an agent in our office that, Eliani, she's got a bunch of Airbnbs. That works for her. I'm not a big Airbnb guy, but she's got Airbnbs in the Poconos, down the shore. So she's making a good rate of return on her money. I have other agents in my office that, have 3 units and 4 unit properties. Then there's other agents that own apartment buildings, 6 units, 8 units, right? There's other agents that are wholesaling. There are other agents that are not quite fixing and flipping, but they're wholesaling, right? Where they just pick up a property, clean it up real quick, throw it right back in the market because there's so many retail clients,
Mm.
right? And there's a shortage of supply, most amount of money in the shortest period of time. So there's so many things you can do.
There's so much opportunity, but the secret, I think not the secret. I mean, it's not a secret. It's not a secret sauce. It's really invest back in your brand, invest back in your business, and invest into the world of real estate.
Diversify, yeah.
And because, we really don't know what, the market will bring, but you got to diversify so that you're prepared for whatever happens. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was great. I hope, the people watching gain tremendous value from this.
They better have.
Yeah, right? Because whenever, on your road to getting to a high production agent, it's hard, right? So I hope this, provided some insight for agents that are on their road as well, so that they can have some tips and have some insight, what mistakes to avoid and kind of learn from the best.
The last message I'll leave people with is, believe in yourself, right? I'm a big believer that if you know somebody that made it, don't use that as like, setting the bar, but don't compare yourself either. But say to yourself, if that person made it, they have to have made it for a reason. They put in the work. That's the secret sauce. Just put in the work, keep your head down, focus on your business, learn, listen as much as possible, and then implement, put into action, and you'll get there. And again, it doesn't matter if it takes you 3, 5, 10 years, as long as you get there. There are so many agents, so many people, obviously, in the world that have not gotten there, and they've been at it for many, many years, right? Just put into action and you will receive, right? Your output is predicated based on your input.